All right, Tria, you want to get us started?
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks for coming. My name is Shreya Nandagunda, and I'm a rising senior at Raleigh Charter High School. So today we're going to have a couple panelists speak about the different ways we can advocate for the environment. And we will go through the different aspects of advocating, and we will offer you ways you can advocate through organizations or just by yourself. So this webinar is really important to me because advocating for the environment can make a big difference in our communities and in our world. When advocating for the environment, you're able to use your voice and make a stand and create a better world for your future. Hopefully, after you listen to these panelists, you'll be inspired to join environmental organizations or start advocating on your own. Advocating for an issue can be very empowering because it allows you to take control of the big issues we all deal with. So feel free to share anything you've learned from our panelists or from this webinar with your friends or family through social media by tagging towards zero waste or using the hashtag #TZWTeensTalk. You can ask any questions directly in the chat, and we will have around 20 minutes at the end of the webinar to answer any of the questions you guys have or any comments you have. So now we're going to introduce our panelists, or our panelists are going to introduce themselves. And they're members of different environmental groups, or they're club leaders, or they're self-made environmental advocates. So first we have Rocco, who is the founder of Athens Drive Solar Panel Initiative.
Sure, so I'll go ahead and just say a little bit about myself. My name is Rocco Nosity. I'm a current junior studying civil engineering with an emphasis in architectural engineering and a minor in sustainable engineering at Purdue University. I'm 20 years old, and I am the founder of Athens Drive Solar Initiative.
Thank you, Rocco. Next, we have Nick, who is part of the Sunrise Movement.
Hello, I'm Nick Trombetta. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, degree in environmental studies. I got involved with the Sunrise Movement a bit after college, and I kind of got into the whole activism thing with the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign that became, way I saw the world, and yeah.
Thank you, Nick. And then finally, we have Sydney, who is the Chief Environmental Officer at Carey.
Hey guys, I'm a rising senior at Carey Academy, and for the past 2 years, I was co-leader of my school's environmental club. We actually did some rebranding and we kind of built the club up from the ground, and we did a lot of fun events and activities, one of which actually featured Nick. I don't know if you remember, but you're a speaker for one of our webinars. And next year, I'm excited to take on a new role at Carey Academy called Chief Environmental and Sustainability Officer to unify all of the sustainability initiatives on campus.
Thank you, Sydney. So to get started, we're going to have an anonymous poll, and pretty much our question is, are you already part of an environmental advocacy group? So the poll should go out now. Feel free to answer.
It actually says it's inactive for some reason.
Okay, well, that's cool too.
Okay. Well, if you are involved with an advocacy group, please tell us in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, so we will start with our questions. So these questions will be individually for our panelists first. So the question is, how did you advocate for the environment? So Rocco, if you could tell us more about the solar panel project at Athens Drive.
Sure, so my main thing about the solar panel project was that I always thought renewable energy sources were like very intriguing. The whole idea of a self-sustaining lifestyle, it really like became a passion of mine. And so when I was in middle and high school, like I always loved nature and I would follow that. And then my sophomore and junior year, I started looking into the actual realistic application of getting solar panels on a school, since schools are one of the main energy uses throughout a year because they house so many students, so many teachers, and their lights are on all the time. Like in order to ventilate and heat like an entire, especially a high school, it's a lot of hallways, a lot of classrooms. And so I looked into the realistic application of getting solar panels on our school. And I started by applying for grants, which it was pretty much a long shot at first because like financially it's pretty difficult. So my main thing for the project was that I fundraised enough to get solar panels in our school, and then use those solar panels to be applied in actual classroom settings so that students could see the realistic application of renewable energy sources. And so that's kind of where I was trying to further renewable energy education. And that's my main advocacy plan.
Thank
That
you.
makes sense.
That's very cool.
Mhm.
Next, Nick, could you tell us about your involvement with your organizations and your trips?
Yeah, so I started getting involved with Sunrise from March 2020, like right before the pandemic hit. So I feel like I started to like find my groove with the Sunrise, right before the pandemic hit and kind of dormant for a while. And then I had this really great stretch starting like last summer for a while, kind of through the winter where we really did a lot. We organized a whole lot of rallies and protests at politicians' doors. We had these really fun events called there were wide awakes where we went to Richard Burr's house and Tom Tillis's house. We get there like, oh my god, like 5 in the morning. It was brutal. I wouldn't sleep that day, but we go and Sunrise is really big on art, so we'd have a lot of art. We'd kind of wake them up to the various crises facing us. Something I liked a lot about Sunrise is that I think compared to like say Extinction Rebellion, which is exclusively emphasizes climate change, and they've actually been criticized for the lack of class consciousness. There's a time when they stopped a train from going out in a working class area in like London, and people were furious because like a an area where a train is we should be encouraging public transportation, so kind of tone deaf there, but they focus on a whole lot of economic issues too. So we've protested politicians. We've supported various candidates. We've played a large role as an organization in helping Ed Markey win. And so I've done a lot with that. And we've also gotten involved with some other organizations like Progressive International, which has been really great. Ties into some of the reading I've done, and obviously some environmental action in Cary, which we plan to rally for the Earth. We're working on trying to get a more environmentally friendly Cary Town Council. That's how you make it happen. So that's kind of some of what I've
Thank you so much, Nick. And finally, Sydney, could you tell us about your involvement in Cary Academy?
Yes, so most of my work, well, all of my work has been focused on my school. So for our club, we kind of split our events and what we do into 2 categories. So we have events and challenges for the student body, and we also have the environmental education aspect. So for the events and challenges, an example of some things that we've done is the carpool challenge, where we give people like a treat or a cookie for carpooling with friends. We've had multiple spirit weeks that are green themed. So like if you do these individual actions, then you earn points for your grade. So those are kind of fun things that we like to do to make being environmentally friendly seem more easy and more fun, more accessible for all. And then we also have environmental education, which is, like I mentioned before, the webinars where we've had Nick speak. We've had Jenna Wadsworth, who was the candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture. And we've also spoken at our town halls, which is in front of the entire school. One time we had people do a stand up in the auditorium and then sit down if you use styrofoam in the cafeteria. So just little things that are all applicable to the student body. That's what I like to focus on. And I'm excited next year because stepping into my bigger role that kind of encompasses all of the initiatives, I'll be able to get some bigger things done. Like I was telling Rocco, I'm hoping to install solar at CA too, and also implement a more efficient composting program.
Thank you, Sydney. So now these questions are for all our panelists. So what are some challenges you guys have experienced when advocating, and how have you overcome them?
I can go ahead and go first. I touched a little bit of it, but then I remembered I didn't want to get too much into it. I wanted to just talk about the advocacy at the first part. My main challenge with the solar panel project was actually, not surprisingly, the funding. Financially, solar panels are not cheap, and especially when you're going through a government agency like a school, it's very, very difficult to try to find any funding, especially when with such tight budget that the school board decides every single year. And so essentially I had to find some way to raise all of it. And so the expectation was that minimum they would cost about $15,000, maximum about 50. So it was all I knew is it was somewhere in between. And so financially, I had to figure that out. And I saw the question in the comments too, which I'll address a little bit, but I can get into more later. When it came to trying to find funding, it was very difficult to find anyone who would just shoot money at an idea. Like, the idea was very far stretched because all I was coming from was a student advocating for the environment, trying to find some way to get solar panels on a school. And a lot of people look at that as like, okay, what have you done previously? Like, what do you have in your background to show that like this will happen? And a lot of times when I applied for grants, like I didn't even hear back because I wasn't a registered nonprofit, because trying to get that was very difficult, especially within the school system. And so I had to find a way to somehow get a grant that was specifically catered towards going towards students and going towards a project that was not like research necessarily, but rather an effort to further sustainable education. And so I ended up applying to whatever I could find online. Like, I just shot out every single application I could find in my free time. I was just applying, writing whatever I could. And I ended up linking up with North Carolina Green Power, which is the local nonprofit in Raleigh that they do every single year. They have a solar schools. It might be an initiative. I can't remember what they call it, but they hand out a certain amount of matching grants to students, or typically faculty and parents who are interested in getting solar on their schools. And that was probably the biggest challenge, was trying to find that. And so luckily enough, we got that. But even after the matching grant, a matching grant only matches what you make. So you still have to fundraise everything else. And so that's where funding, you really have to push. And that was probably the biggest challenge of trying to make the Athens Drive Solar Panel Initiative happen.
Do any of our other panelists have anything to add?
I would say something big, especially since Sunrise works, in the political sphere. I would just say bureaucracy in general, which I think you could just tie to how politics works in America, in that it is meant to do nothing. For example, if we're talking North Carolina, our two senators are Richard Burr and Tom Tillis. It's not very environmentally friendly. And even though the vast majority of Americans want to see environmental action, the politicians we elect aren't always friendly to it. Most aren't. Even in Cary, our town council is very unfriendly. But luckily, on the flip side, Chapel Hill, being a pretty progressive town, they recently drafted a climate plan, and they love that Sunrise was showing up to their meetings. We had actually built a really great relationship with them. But I would say in general, what a lot of we do is, kind of try to be kind of a force on the left to push politicians to adopt more progressive environmental policy. But the bureaucracy, the majorities, and just the way our whole political system works, it inhibits progress, and that's something we run into pretty frequently.
Thanks, Nick. Do you have anything to add, Sydney?
Yeah, I would just say, regarding my work with the club at Cary Academy, the biggest problem is definitely people that are apathetic or not really willing to get involved with changing their individual actions, because obviously sometimes being individually sustainable can make you go out of your way a little bit. It's inconvenient, and a lot of people are just comfortable with, using styrofoam and plastic every day. And especially at a school like Cary Academy, where everybody's like very fortunate, very privileged. So I would say the biggest thing that I've had to overcome is just accepting that fact, and how some people just aren't really going to care. It's kind of hard to change their attitudes, but what you can do is just focus on developing like your niche group of supporters. We have a very, very dedicated group of members of our club, and I'm very appreciative of them, and they're always participating in our events. So just having them, that kind of support system, really helps.
Thanks, Sydney. Okay, our next question is, who are some people, or I guess organizations, that have helped you out when you're performing your either programs or actions or things you've done?
I can go ahead and start again, but I touched on it a little bit. The North Carolina Green Power, that local nonprofit, was a huge help because they've already established a solar school system. By the time we actually partnered with them, it was their third year doing it, I believe. And so the first 2 years, they had already kind of like run the ropes a little bit. They tried out with a few. Typically, they aim for lower income, lower like higher poverty rates, like lower graduation rate type schools to try to intrigue kids. So they were going out to typically like the East Coast of North Carolina, um, but they had already kind of run the ropes a little bit, and so their entire thing was that they help give you this matching grant, and then once you raise the other half of the money, they assist you in the marketing, they assist you in working with the actual solar installers and kind of helping you along the process because they kind of understand the industry, they have connections. So like I don't necessarily know about discounts necessarily, but they knew how to talk. They knew because like me going in, I don't know how to talk to a solar panel installer. Like I know a little bit, but at the same time, like you could have went on and on about a 10-volt system versus a 5-volt system. I would never have known what was realistic, how much it would power, all that stuff. I would have had to do so much research. But that's what they do every day. And so North Carolina Green Power was an extremely large help, and I'm very appreciative for everything they did for us. But them, and then also later on, we were probably 80% of the way through the funding of the matching in order to get the solar panels, and we were about, I think, 1,200 short that we were trying to figure out within a month span. And another huge help was the North Carolina Electric Cooperative, who was actually trying to increase their student involvement. And one way that they wanted to do so was I just reached out. It was one of these contacts that I didn't know going into it. I just sent out some emails to people who, ironically, they had shown up to career fairs in the past, but they had left their emails. So one of our teachers had an old career fair flyer. And so I just sent out a mass email, kind of just like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, is anyone interested in contributing? And I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but she was extremely friendly, and North Carolina Electric Cooperative actually worked together to provide $2,000 in funding, which was over what we needed. So we got to upgrade the system just a little bit. And they also partnered with our STEM Energy and Sustainability Academy in the future to increase the amount of like field trips. We did a field trip to their solar plant and like office in Raleigh, which was really cool. And they were also a huge help in the Athens Drive Sustainable, the solar panel initiative.
It's nice to know you had so many people helping you. And I definitely did not like the circuit unit in physics, so I understand.
No, me neither.
Any other panelists?
I would say just in general, not gonna point anyone in particular out, but I would say, from working with Sunrise, it's always good to just in general, collaborating with other organizations. So I think that's how we really make change happen in the world. I always tell people that that corporations and people in that arena, especially you see with the oil companies, like what can you do? It's about working together with other people to make massive change happen. So I would say just working with other organizations, finding common ties, finding ways to help each other is how you make the world a better place. Because there are all these, social justice, more and more in our area, it's become fragmented. People having their own individual causes. There's, LGBTQ rights, there's Black Lives Matter, there's climate change, there's economic justice, and we can all lump together and we can all, form a powerful block. And obviously just working with other organizations, there are a lot of good ones out there. There are a lot of commonalities, so I think that's just, comes to the world better.
Thanks, Nick. Sydney?
I would say I am very thankful of our teacher sponsor of our club. Her name is Miss Malloy. Nick, you know her. She is an environmental science teacher and an environmental policy teacher. I actually took her policy class this year, and she's just so inspiring. She's contagious. Her passion for the environment and really for anything, I think environment related. She's just the perfect person to support us through our endeavors. And she really goes out of her way. Like she takes her Saturdays off to go on park cleanups with us, takes her afternoons off to meet with us, to plan, and she even bakes cake cones for us. So I think just having such a supportive figure throughout the entire process really helps. And for all the teens here, I mean, I think it's really important to establish those connections with your teachers, and they can even lead you to more opportunities later on. And I would say my second person is Mr. Venka, who a couple of us have connections with her here, but she was the head of the PTAA Environmental Committee formerly, and I met her when we were trying to change the composting system in the cafeteria, and she actually helped me get started with Towards Zero Waste. So that's one of the reasons that I'm here today.
Those sound like some really great teachers. So for our next question, it is, what motivated you to get involved, and why do you think this is so important?
My main motivation, I didn't touch on it too much, but the solar panels, I saw the question, how did it impact the energy costs? The solar panels themselves, the system, what isn't super, it doesn't produce enough to power the entire school. It produces enough to power about one wing of the school, which is in comparison to the entire school. It's just like the lighting too, it's not a ton. So it cuts off a few hundred a month, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't remember entirely. My main motivation and purpose was I wanted some sort of realistic application for students to be able to experience the renewable energy sources that they see in classrooms and actually understand how they work, what they do, rather than just seeing it on a screen. And so that was one reason why I actually wanted solar panels installed so people could see them working and actually understand that it is possible to do something like that rather than actually just watch a video or even take a field trip. Like, they see it on their school every single day. It's right outside our library, our community library, and our junior lot. So anyone walking in sees it. And so that's kind of one cool thing that I was really motivated by, as well as just the idea of a self-sustaining lifestyle.
Thanks, Rocco. Any other panelists?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to one guy for motivating me, not entirely, but like I said before, the Bernie Sanders campaign was like a real game changer for me. Yeah, I'll talk about that. But yeah, for the first time, before then, I credit him with, kind of just getting me a lot more interested. I kind of had a baseline interest in politics. Like, yeah, this is good, right? This is wrong. I'd post on Facebook sometimes, but that was the first time I'd gotten some real hands-on experience, and especially when we were succeeding, in terms of the polls and all that. For the first time, I felt like I was changing the world. That's what it felt like, and he has all this, pretty heightened rhetoric about political revolution, all that. But that gave me a taste of that, and Bernie lost, but that gave me the desire to do more, become involved, and because there are a lot of good groups out there. So I'd say it was just getting my first taste of, of doing things that can really change the world and make the world a better place. Was just something I'd not experienced before and something I wanted more of. So I would say that was a big motivator. And then getting involved with Sunrise and all the awesome stuff we were able to do with the Wide Awake actions, I think really just tangible action is something that really helps. I really feel like you're doing something. And I think that's really important, in addition to, the educational component, the discussions, action really gets people motivated. And approaching politicians. I haven't personally approached too many politicians. I've called them on the phone. I've left some messages and stuff. I've called my legislators, and I think it's important just to kind of be not to get too heightened. I think be friendly, but also state what you want to see. Make it like a productive conversation. Don't be too antagonistic, because I feel like they love to paint the young people as crazy. So just yada yada yada. Just know what you're going to talk about. Have some facts, and yeah, that's kind of my general.
Thanks, Nick. Sydney, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll definitely build off of what Nick said about feeling like you're making a difference and tangible action. I think that's the biggest thing for me. I grew up in a household that's very, very environmentally minded. So for me, that's never been kind of a choice. Like I just always wanted to be the most green that I could. And that's really what I try to emphasize at Carey Academy, just how individual action does matter. Sometimes like fighting climate change can be really daunting because you need to change the policies, you need to convince the politicians, and that is all obviously very important, but I also would like to emphasize, especially for students like us, that individual action can help to change the culture. And that's just as important to change people's mindsets and just to have them care, because that is definitely the first step.
Yeah, thank you, Sydney. Our next question is, what can teens do to be part of these organizations, or how can they get involved in their school?
So my organization specifically isn't really geared towards accepting new members. So something like that is much more not of a, oh, come join, but rather a, here, take this as an example and go do it yourself. Like use this as, hey, it is possible. I've seen somebody do it. The path has been like paved out a little bit, so it's a lot easier, but there's still plenty of space to do your own thing and even make it even better. There's so many ways where you can make it. My main thing that I not necessarily regret, but that I didn't do too well of because I was too busy focusing on the actual logistics of making it happen, was just the marketing side of it, just making it well known in the community, making sure people knew what was happening at our school. My STEM Academy coordinator, Shane Berry, he did a great job of sending stuff out and posting things on his website, especially talking to students in class, which is a huge thing. But at the same time, it was like something we kind of lacked on. Sorry, what was the question again? I get lost.
You're good. What are some
Oh,
things you do to be involved in organizations or to do something in their school?
yeah. So my main thing was just use it as a leadership tool. So like use it as an example. You can't necessarily join the Athens Drive Solar Panel Initiative anymore because like it's already done, but there's still plenty of ways where you can take that and go on your own, is most of what I was trying to communicate in that.
Thanks, Rocco. Any of our other panelists?
I would say kind of keep talking about the organizations I know, but there are a lot of youth-oriented organizations. So I think just finding the right ones. Like Sunrise has a meeting. Sunrise Chapel Borough, which I was involved with, is kind of on the down low right now. But there are a bunch of hubs. There's one in Cary. There's one in Durham. So both, they have hub meetings every 2 weeks. So just look into it, find the hub meeting, join, and then go to the hub meeting, find a way to get involved. So I think Sunrise is a great way, a really great group and it's pretty teen oriented. I like feel old when I'm like doing Sunrise stuff, being 24. But yeah, so just finding the right organization and going to their meetings, I think is a good way to get your foot, in the door.
Yeah, I remember Sunrise Movement coming to my school, so I know they do move around. Sydney, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just want to toss out a few more names of youth organizations. A couple of my friends started a youth Triangle Climate Collective, and those are all for youth, obviously. And there's also 0 Hour, which is a nationwide organization. So a lot of great options out there. And I just want to speak also to, in regards to at school. If you don't already have an environmental club, I think it's a great option to start one because it's really rewarding just what you can do within your school community, because you can almost immediately see the impacts. So definitely talk to a teacher to support your club. Like me, if they teach environmental science or biology, then that's even better. Or if you already have an environmental club, then definitely join. And the beauty of environmentalism, as Shreya kind of touched on in her intro, is that there's so many ways that you can get involved, like endless possibilities, from carpool challenges or environmental education or just going on a nature walk to appreciate nature. All of those can make a difference. So I think just starting something at school or joining an organization, anything really just to get involved.
Sydney brings up good points. Usually your environmental clubs at school will start bringing different things that you haven't thought of, like going climate strikes and stuff. So joining your environmental club at school is definitely a good idea. So our next question is, how can you gain confidence to talk to officials or your school administration in order to actually do something either at school or outside of school?
I mean, my main thing is like you have to understand that you're doing something good. So it's not like you're going up and asking them for the world. You're not asking them to have a huge party. Like you're asking them to put solar panels on a school. You're asking them to start a club, even to have a discussion about, like in Nick's example, to have a discussion about some sort of politics, some sort of just law, some idea in general, some concept. And you have to understand that you are doing something good. You're advocating for the environment. And so be confident in the environment, because if you aren't, then somebody else has to. And if nobody else is, then no one is. So someone needs to speak for the environment. So it's your role. And if face-to-face contact is a little bit too intimidating, you can always go through email route. You can always do virtual calls. There's so many ways where you can like communicate with people, and especially reach out to people. Like for example, I had to reach out to so many businesses. And so, yeah, sometimes I would call and sometimes I'd see people in person, but just sending emails, like you're not necessarily seeing them in person. So something like that, you just have to understand that it's for a good cause, and confidence should come naturally based on knowing you're doing something good.
Thanks, Rocco. Any of our other panelists?
Yeah, remind me the question. It was how to become more comfortable talking to like officials and people and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to what Rocco was saying, one thing, I'll loop it back to what I was talking about, the Chapel Hill Town Council. Because sometimes, what you're saying is actually going to be welcome. Because it's easy to forget, but most people want to see, legislation addressing climate change. And there are a lot of popular proposals. The Green New Deal is actually very popular. And so I think keeping that in mind, that a lot of times it will be well received. And also, I think a lot of it's practice, because I remember I found knocking on doors to be a lot more natural for me. I've done some phone making, and I'm not gonna lie, it is like not quite my thing. It is tough, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. The more you talk with it, the more it just becomes natural. But I think just getting yourself to do it, you understand. As Rocco was saying, it's a good thing to do. You're doing a good deed, and a lot of times it will be welcomed. And just getting that practice, knocking on doors, talking to people. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be, and then you'll start to enjoy it. It'll come naturally.
Yeah, Rocco and Nick pretty much said it perfectly, but I'll just echo that the most important thing is to frame it as doing it for a greater cause, for the environment, and keeping it authentic and genuine for your love for the planet is all that matters. And generally within a school, I would say the administrators don't really want to work against you. I would almost say that they want you to be involved, and they admire students that have passion and initiative. The teacher that supports our club says that the most exciting part about teaching is actually just seeing passion that students have, and helping foster that. So reaching out is the first step, and definitely if you have that passion and that drive, then you should have confidence to do it.
I'm going to throw in one more thing. I think a problem with the environmental movement is a lot of times it gets framed from the perspective of like, you've got to save like the polar bears, which is true, but also you have to frame it from like their perspective. Realistically, people do operate generally in self-interest. It's not to say we are like self-interested creatures who don't work together, but with interests like, we work together, that we're social creatures. But you do have to frame it to like, how will this benefit me? Like, how will this benefit me as a politician? Well, you invest in renewables, you create renewable jobs, you can help with transition, which will, obviously people like that. You create good, high-paying jobs. That's a big part of the Green New Deal. That I think the most important way to sell it to most people is from an economic perspective. If you pair it with the PRO Act, which helps people unionize, you have all these really good green new jobs that'll help, people who are struggling to get by, who, have issues that, are more important to them than climate change. If they can't pay rent and they're having trouble feeding their kids, they might not be super concerned about whatever environmental thing you're talking about. Frame it from their child's future, that gets people a lot from an economic perspective. So I think it's relating to people, that makes you seem more down to earth. And I think people appreciate that. That's the way that you see it.
So the next question, Nick kind of really touched on this, but what are some key aspects to consider when persuading people to work with you, especially people in authoritative positions?
My main thing would be to communicate what their benefits would be from you working with them. Like in my case, when I was talking to Wake County, I will say some of their officials were very difficult to talk to. They were not very for the whole movement because they had to go out of their way to do a little bit more work to put solar panels on their school. So a big thing would just be to talk very like naturally, but also constantly remind them that this is in their benefit as well. Like Wake County, I know going forward that they will communicate and they will use the solar panels as a huge, not necessarily marketing tool, but a way to show that their students and their schools are sustainable. And so it's kind of a funny thing where I had so much backlash when I was personally trying to get solar panels on the school. Yet I know once it's done, they're going to be like, oh, look, we have solar panels now. Like, look at the cool things we have. And so that's one thing where you always have to kind of remind them of the benefit of both sides. And so that's just kind of how you structure your, not necessarily argument, but your conversation and your persuasive, like whatever you, if you need something from someone, especially someone in a authoritative position, someone higher up, like always just remind them how this will look good for them. In the example of North Carolina Electric Cooperative, they actually did that partnership with our school. And so that's something where they can go back and be like, oh, we actually partner with local schools. We have all these students that came for a field trip, like all this stuff. We have a movement with like the youth and that generation, rather than just saying like, oh, like we donated money. So that's one thing where always look at the benefit of both sides and communicate that in order to persuade someone.
Thanks, Rocco. Anyone else?
I agree with everything that's been said. Definitely the benefits. I think my previous answer may have been a little bit too idealistic if you just look at, oh, I have passion for the environment, but Nick and Rocco both bring up great points about definitely looking from their other side and looking from their shoes.
Yeah. So now we will have time to answer any questions in the chat, but if not, we will continue with our questions. One of the questions in the chat was, how do you get other kids in the school engaged? That seems like it would be the hardest part. Also, changing the culture of the school if it's not environmentally focused.
I will say changing the culture of the school and especially trying to like persuade students to be environmentally conscious is very difficult because it's so easy. I used to see so many students walk in with plastic water bottles every single day, a different one, and they'd throw them away, sometimes recycle them, that type of thing. And that's such like a minuscule thing that like even my mom ingrained to me when I was young that like we use reusable water bottles. We don't need to throw away plastic unnecessarily. Like it's not that much more work to just not have that extra waste. And so that's one thing where sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question? Or the question right there. In order to engage other students, you kind of need to look at their perspective and see what would be the least amount of effort from them, or what would be a benefit for them to do some movement. So for example, if someone, it might sound a little selfish, but if someone wants to become involved in your environmental campaign, say it looks great on college applications. Like it's something that they can use going forward. So yeah, like it might be a little selfish and self-interested, but at the same time, it's doing something good in the end because they're getting involved and they're doing something. And so that's a great reason. Also, another project I did, I'll touch on this just a little bit since it's not really the point of why I'm here, but my sophomore year, I did a reusable water bottle drive and I designed an infographic in my graphic design class, and then contacted local businesses to see if they would pledge money to put advertisements on the infographic to then use that money and print actual reusable water bottles. And I did it through a very environmentally conscious like water bottle company. I was able, after all the businesses that bought advertisements for like usually between $50 to $200, I think we had $575, which ended up paying for 75 water bottles, I believe. And so what I did then is I gave them out for free to students within my school, like within Athens. And those students who, some of them were specifically students who carried around plastic water bottles every single day, but that was just an easy way for them to have access to a reusable water bottle, and then they could trade, like bring that every single day and not use plastic. It's just something, an easy little switch for them that like they didn't have to do too much for. You essentially provided them the water bottle, and the infographic had information about what you can and can't recycle, which is something a lot of people don't know. For example, like pizza boxes, you actually can't recycle those because of the pizza grease. And so that's one thing that was like on there that students could learn from and take information from just having in their hand. They didn't have to do anything except for pick it up.
Yep. Thanks, Rocco. Anyone else, or we can just move on to the next question? Why should teens advocate for the environment, and what do they bring to the table? And Nick, if you want to go first, because I know you have to head out soon.
Yeah, I've got a few minutes. But one thing I will say, especially from working with Nina and Karina at Carey Academy and Sunrise, I'm just blown away by how much energy the youth brings to the table. I mean, I was like kind of environmentally minded. My mom showed me an inconvenient truth when I was a kid, and it was always kind of like I was not politically aware at all. But the environment, I was like, yeah, I mean, like climate change, that's like bad, we should do something about it. But I mean, to see people, like young kids, like freshmen in high school, organizing, getting together, I think it's really inspiring. I think the younger, they really have that whole like, well, what about, my future argument? I think works because the younger you get, the more bleak the future gets. I always tell people, I think I'll be fine. But, the younger it gets, you keep approaching the point, like, I don't know. And I think that's a compelling argument. And I think, done the right way, it can make, especially people, our parents age and who are parents, it makes them think. So I think they have a really unique role in that, the fact that they're the people who are going to bear the largest burden of it. In effect, our parents' generation, and it's not on every single person. It's on the political structures, it's on the oil companies that are allowed to flourish and we're subsidized, and just the way that has driven everything. But the generation above us, they essentially profit off of all this fossil fuel usage and left us with a potential just environmental disaster, potential like climate apocalypse. And I think that's a powerful narrative. And I think the youth, teenagers are bringing a whole lot of energy. I think that enthusiasm plus that narrative is really, really important, and goes well paired with a very practical. This is how this helps you. This is why this is important. This can help. This is how this can help you improve your life. I think those are two narratives that go really well hand in hand. I think it's very important, and incredible what they bring to the table.
Thanks, Nick. Any of our other panelists?
I'll definitely reiterate that classic Greta Thunberg saying that, we are going to be dealing with the effects of climate change that was caused by the generation before us. So definitely that is what motivates a lot of youth. But for me, I've actually started to think about it in more of a tangible way, especially now that I'm starting my college process next year. I'm going to be a senior. I've been seeing that a lot of schools and their majors are very climate oriented. And that's one thing that I've just realized is sitting here, that there's so many things you can connect to climate change and sustainability, and it really is the future. I was talking to a couple of my friends who do debate, and they're like, yeah, I can just connect any issue to climate change and just make an argument off of that. So it's just, I think it's such a prevalent issue, and it's really inspiring to see that the younger kids are even becoming very green-minded from a young age. So I think that's important because it's definitely going to be prevalent in our future.
Thanks, Sydney, and thank you, Nick, for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Do you have anything to add, Rocco?
No, I think they said it pretty perfectly. That pretty much covered most of what I would have said anyways.
Okay, we have a few more questions, and then Sydney will present our legislation. But Our next question is, what are some important issues that teens can focus on?
I'll go ahead and start, but I think a huge issue is simply still the whole recycling issue. Like, especially with COVID kind of threw everything in a whirlwind, but what it did for small businesses and even like larger businesses like restaurants, it created this entire system of like takeout, delivery. It created this system of Amazon Prime being everything, where some people don't go to the grocery store at all anymore. They order things, like they even do like DoorDash. But half of that also includes the fact that like when they're door dashing, they're not doing reusable bags anymore, um, stuff like that. So plastic is just everywhere, and that's one thing where somehow, I mean, it's extremely difficult to try to convince a consumer to change their habits because like it's effort for them. Whereas I think somehow we need to try and think of some issue where possibly it could be a delivery service that uses reusable bags, something like that, but um, somehow tackling from the other side to make things easier on consumers, but also reducing the amount of plastic and waste that goes into everyday life.
Yeah, in fact, Towards Zero Waste is doing a plastic-free July and is encouraging people to just go plastic-free for July. So if you want to try that out. Sydney, do you have anything to add?
I was just gonna say that there's a huge variety of what you can focus on. It kind of depends on your passion and what irks you personally. Like obviously for Rocco, it was solar and energy. One of the co-leaders of our club is really, really passionate about fast fashion. So she does a lot of work on how to, shop more sustainably, which I think is very relevant to us teens as well. I also have a classmate who did an independent study on environmental racism, which is more, justice focused. And there's actually a group of sixth graders at Carey Academy, like Rocco mentioned, the styrofoam containers and the takeout containers. That's what our cafeteria has been doing, which is so makes everybody really angry. But the sixth graders actually decided to take action and they went to talk to the head of school about it. So they want to try to implement composting next year, which I think is great. So that's just an example of the huge variety of issues that you can focus on, and it really depends on your passion.
Thanks, Sydney. And our last question is, what is something you want people to take away from this webinar?
I mean, it's the sole purpose of why the solar panels are there, but do your own thing. Like the path is paved, but at the same time, there's a new path that can be paved every single day. Like there's so many different things that you can be passionate about, topics, movements that you can get involved in, and just use whatever you can as an example and do your own thing. Like I don't want the solar panel thing to be like, oh, everyone has to get solar panels now. I want it to be like if some other freshman or sophomore, junior, senior has a passion that they really care about and they want to do something, don't just like say, oh, I could have done that, or oh, that's a lot of work. Be like, why don't I try it out? Why don't I just like go for it? Because obviously, like no school in Wake County has had solar, especially from a student-led initiative at all. Like that was the first. So make your own first. That's my main lesson that I hope anyone can take away from the Athens Drive Solar Panel Initiative. It's something that I wish even adults, anyone can take it away. Like, just don't feel afraid just because of time or effort. Like, you never know what's going to come out, and sometimes it's so worth it. And I 100% say it was very well worth it.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna say my message is similar. Just take action and you won't regret it, because activism can come in so many different forms. It's not always going out in the streets and marching. It can be anything as small as just convincing your classmates to take action. And just getting involved in whatever way will make a world of difference, not only because of the impact on the environment, but also because of the connections that you'll form and the amazing people that you'll meet. So I'm eternally grateful for that.
Thank you guys for an amazing webinar. Thank you for answering all the questions. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to visit our page, which I am putting in the chat right now. And right now, we will get some information about an important bill that Sydney will tell us about.
All right, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the Break Free from Plastic bill that we figured is very fitting for the upcoming Plastic Free July event. So this is basically a federal bill that's going through Congress right now. It's comprehensive, and the goal is to get rid of, to enact plastic policies that will accomplish these following goals here. So I thought this infographic kind of summed it up really well. So it's really comprehensive, and given that it's a federal bill, they're going to need a lot of support. So what I wanted to share with you all today is that it's actually really easy to just sign a letter, and this is going to go to your local congressman, and this is one way that you can just get involved in activism to support this act. So you can read more about it on this page. I'll actually drop these links in the chat. And if you go to this page, they already have a pre-written letter down here, which is really convenient. All you need to do is just put in your name, put in your information, a little bit of your information, and then just click send on this letter. And you can edit it however you see fit, but it's easiest obviously just to send the letter here, and that's all you need to do. And I'll send it in the chat. Yes, Andrea makes a good point.
Okay, thank
All
you
right.
so much,
Yep.
for that information. We will also be sending out an email with the resource page attached, and this page will also have the links that Sydney posted and more information about this bill. So we also have a kids page, or well, if you go to the Towards Zero Waste website, there's a kids page which has information on how to go towards zero waste, which is also a great way to just, be environmentally friendly yourself. And I made it, so you should check it out. Thanks once again, everyone, for coming, and I hope you all have a great day.